Good afternoon or late morning to everyone. If you're on the West Coast, I'm speaking to you from upstate New York. Megan, you're speaking to us from
Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas, so we got a good spread. I'm excited for today's presentation to Giving Tuesday Now. What? You could throw the hashtag in there if you're going to be tweeting about it too. Look into the future of fundraising. So there's a lot of reasons that I'm excited about today's conversation. This isn't going to be very heavy on, there's a lot of good slides in here, but we're going to have a nice conversation about where we can go strategically and tactically in the coming weeks. Before we get started with our presentation from our Partners of the Year in 2019, Charity Dynamics, actually, for Neon One, a little bit about little bit about today's presentation, who's hosting it, all that good stuff. My name is Tim Sarrantonio. I am Director of Strategic Partnerships at Neon One. Neon One is a technology ecosystem that serves 35,000 nonprofits through a wide variety of technologies. We're going to be kind of zeroing in a little focus when we talk about ours on a platform called Rallybound. But touching on CRM, touching on giving events, touching on all the different ways that nonprofits manage their fundraising revenue streams and channels. And so my background's in a lot of different fundraising, raised about $3 million for various causes, used a lot of different databases. I use Rallybound myself, actually, so I'm pretty excited to be joined by Charity Dynamics before we get into who Meghan is and the team from Charity Dynamics. Housekeeping. One, we are recording this. Rest assured, this is being recorded. We always put this up on our YouTube channel as well. We have a dedicated partners YouTube channel where our kind of our NPOs Rise campaign, hashtag NPOs Rise, if you want to join the conversation on Twitter, is kind of rolling out a lot of different resources on how we can address what's happening during the pandemic. And this is a really critical time for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and that's what we wanted to start thinking about now. It's thinking about the future. So this is being recorded. There's a resource-rich slide deck that is a handout, but if for some reason it's giving you trouble, you're not sure where to download it, for instance, then no worries. We'll make sure that it'll get in your hands. We also have contact information available in today's presentation. And then finally, there is a Q&A that some people have already been saying hello from Stockton, Chicago, the nation's capital, which I assume is Washington, D.C., because, we actually serve an international audience, but love Washington, D.C. as well. New Mexico, Washington State, a lot of great folks. We got my kids making a cameo already who just ran in, by the way. So we're going to keep it live, organic here. Phoenix, California, Delaware. Wow, I love the roll call. That's a lot of fun. That's like, this is the first one where it's been doing that. Miami Beach. So welcome everyone. And we're from upstate New York. We got Austin, Texas, and Rachel's from Chicago. And Rachel's the one fielding all the different questions. So with that being said, Meghan, I'm going to kind of have you kick things off and drive today's presentation, conversation. Looking forward to, where do we go next after last week's Giving Tuesday Now?
Perfect, love it. Hi everybody, I'm Meghan Dankovich. I'm the VP of Client Success for Charity Dynamics. I help lead our consulting department there and our strategy. And it's been quite a ride, right? The last couple of months. As a digital marketing agency, we help our nonprofits obviously with their platforms, kind of leveraging that the best we can to best meet the needs of peer-to-peer, direct response, web dev, email. We have a product, the balanced fundraising product. We have participant support staff. We have a bot. So we're a little mix of things, but we've always really valued our partnership with our clients who are on the Rallybound solution, one's Rallybound solution. So it's really exciting to be able to come talk about this world that we're in with Tim. And we've had some really interesting conversations the past week or so. And so excited to be here talking about this. Now, Giving Tuesday was just last week, so you were really fast about this, Tim, but I was really thankful that you had a few numbers, what you saw to share with us, and I think that'd be a great way for us to set some context for the rest of the conversation. You want to share with us what you learned?
Absolutely. So if you folks are not aware, and the thing is that things are moving so quickly, it's completely understandable if you're like, wait, what? We had a Giving Tuesday last week, May
Right?
5th. Yeah, I know. May 5th, they actually did host a worldwide celebration of generosity driven by the folks over at Giving Tuesday. What a lot of folks sometimes uh, not fully realize is that Giving Tuesday is just simply organizing a lot of these decentralized campaigns. So literally the only thing that you have to do to join something like Giving Tuesday, or in this case, Giving Tuesday Now, is say, I am participating in Giving Tuesday Now, and that's it. We didn't actually want to focus too much on Giving Tuesday Now itself. We're going to use it as a good foil for the rest of the ways we should be thinking about appeals for the rest of the year. It's a really good kind of like way to like centralize what's happened there. But as we go through, think about the strategies on how you're going to approach either Giving Tuesday itself, your end of the year appeals, if you have a giving event in your community, if you're going to be doing stuff around a capital campaign. Like basically, Giving Tuesday Now is a really good recent example of a moment that we want to turn into momentum. That's the big thing. Now, how did it go? So there aren't any firm official numbers from Giving Tuesday themselves yet in terms of how the actual day went. Now, I'm part of their data collaborative. I'm on the phone with them consistently. We're starting to coordinate some interesting conversations around the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which is the largest individual data set of donor data in the world. And so we were able to kind of quickly turn around a lot of data in the Neon One ecosystem, and our 2020 results from Giving Tuesday Now were over $54 million generated in that time period. We did a timestamp review of like basically we took the central time and said from midnight to midnight, what money came in and into our platforms. And we analyzed that on our CRM platform, our peer-to-peer platform, Rallybound, and our Giving Day platform, which generated a lot of giving events around the country. The most prominent of those was in the North Dallas region. North Texas Gives, United Way Dallas, and Dallas Cowboys teamed up, and they did 20 million. So that's a big number when it comes to that. But that represents thousands of nonprofits that are receiving that money. So if you do an apples to apples comparison, which as you can see, we say don't do that, but people are inevitably going to do that. We actually saw a 50% revenue increase compared to last Giving Tuesday. A lot of the other data providers, what they're doing is saying, what is it like from last May? This is why you can't do all that. Giving Tuesday is a one-off thing that it's just not, it's not really good to do any concrete solid comparisons other than the two bottom metrics, which is what's happening from last month, because that's in the middle of the pandemic. So all the data on the top level is like interesting in a silo. The bottom ones are more interesting to me. So, and this is what's going to get into where we start to think about our strategy overall, regardless of the size of your program, your operations, because I know that our audience is going to be kind of small nonprofits all the way to big enterprise organizations that have dedicated programs for specific revenue streams. So, no matter what, we're seeing this across the ecosystem. Giving Tuesday Now's credit card average, because we had a breakout for ACH, which was a little bit kind of in line with this, a little bit higher, but less volume. So we went with credit card, 10% above April 2020, which I think is important, because if we're looking at the data, what's happening, we're starting to kind of see that there's a kind of jump in online giving, and then on the offline giving side, we're actually starting to see the numbers go down a little bit in terms of the average size, the volume, things of that nature. So Giving Tuesday Now is actually pretty encouraging because they went up. It might actually, if we can ride that wave and kind of tap into that, that's a good thing. There's a lot of data that Giving Tuesday has that actually shows that when people participate in this campaign, overall numbers begin to grow. And so this is a trend in the right direction. So offline gifts, which we're counting as things like checks, cash, that's the vast majority of what's in there. We have some things like Bitcoin. We have some things like, Stock was actually some pretty well represented tenders in there, but a lot of it's checks, right? And
Yeah.
so the average was about 62% above what we saw on April. So those are the two bottom numbers that I want to make sure that we think about moving forward through today's presentation, because they really kind of drill into how do we think about trends. So that's what we saw in our ecosystem. Again, other vendors, other point-to-point solutions are going to have possibly a different analysis of this, but this is what we saw. Even when talking to Giving Tuesday, I think that a lot of folks actually saw kind of a little bit of the inverse of what we've seen, which is that they probably saw more on Giving Tuesday themselves, whereas we saw a pretty big jump. Meghan, when you look at this, though, I know we're going to get into these types of things. What does this tell you overall?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that people were rallying on a day they were asked to rally, right? And that's huge. I think a lot of the questions that we've been hearing from our clients are, can we be asking? Should we be asking? And I understand that Giving Tuesday Now was really presenting itself more as, let's come together as a celebration of strength in this time of tragedy and crisis, and really making it that global gathering, so to speak. But obviously there was that ask associated with it. And I think really people were a little bit tentative, is it appropriate for me to be asking? And should I be asking now, or is that potentially maybe cannibalizing other asks that I might have or think about doing later in the year? And I think what this proves is that people are wanting to help. People are hungry for that community, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Good summary on that. That's what we're thinking too.
So I think, as you and I were talking about Giving Tuesday Now, we're like, but now what, right? Once we get this beyond us, and what does the rest of the year look like? I know, you're in the same boat we are, where a lot of the clients were stressing out because COVID-19 hits us right in the middle of launching our spring events. And so the last, I'll say, call it 8 weeks ago or more, the initial panic was, how do I pivot quickly, right? I'm supposed to be having my first walk event this weekend, and the US just shut down. And so there was a lot of, reacting and trying to figure out what in the world are we going to do with our March events, or April events, or May events. And this comes along, right, as an opportunity to try to show a different side, I would say, of this pandemic and of the crisis. And then in the last, call it 4 weeks, I think we've gotten our wits about ourselves a little bit and said, okay, all right, we made it through March. We're sort of unfortunately getting a little bit used to this and realize it's sunk in. It's not going to go away anytime soon fully. So it's not just about thinking about spring or even just summer. Now it's about thinking, what about the rest of 2020? And what about 2021? And so I know this is where you and I were thinking, yeah, let's break our little crystal ball. And what can we do to help nonprofits think about the rest of 2020 and how they not just navigate it, but try to survive in a big way, facing what's not just a global pandemic, but also a recession potentially, right?
Absolutely.
So the 4 things that we wanted to share with you all today are talking about, obviously, the learnings and the data. There's new data that just came into your world with Giving Tuesday Now, and what might we be able to do with that? We also want to talk about preparing for Giving Tuesday and year-end appeals as that quickly comes along. In fact, a lot of our clients, we normally would have already been several weeks into planning. So, and that was put on pause, but we have some strong feelings about how we need to get that back in motion. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then 2 other things we want to touch on are that it's not just about your peer-to-peer events, it's also all the other giving channels that you have, and how can we be putting all things firing on all cylinders to make sure that we can navigate the rest of 2020 as strongly as we possibly can. And of course, we can't have a webinar without talking about virtualizing events right now. So, so we'll get to all that. But Tim, I was hoping that you would talk a bit about the data and the follow-up. I mean,
Sure.
you're a database guy, so what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and the reason that I even kind of came out of the gate talking about average size gifts, and it's also important to think about median gifts too, as well, because you're going to have outliers that might drive things up, is that, and Meghan, I love the point that you said, we have new data coming in, and it's not how I interpreted that is not just Neon one having new data in, your own organizations have new data coming in. So all of this is just kind of like, I almost hate saying the word best practice, right? Because the best practice is like, well, this is the only way that you can do it. And the reality is that everybody's situation is going to be hyper specific to their donor base, their mission. We're actually seeing differences in terms of like certain types of missions are being hurt more than others. So there's different types of strategies that we can engage that. But overall, this is a good way to step back and take a breath and start to actually look at the actual donor data in your database of record, your CRM. So if you're using something like Neon CRM, if you're using something like Salesforce, then this is a good time to start getting some reports ready, to start creating some buckets. And this is where I think that is a good way to start. Building, especially after something like GivingTuesdayNow, the likelihood is that a large majority of those gifts or that have been acquired as a first-time donor are going to be on the smaller side. And we found that data to be pretty consistent through the Fundraising Effectiveness Project in terms of positive giving events like this are really, really good drivers for folks who are under $250 or more. And notice our average size gift on the online side was $131, right? So that's really, really good and encouraging there. We're going to get into the strategy of how we should be thinking about those folks. Meghan's got some really good data to kind of make you think about what we should be doing there. But overall, next few weeks, think about these smaller donors in particular, because we don't want to lose them later on. The more committed folks who are giving larger gifts, yes, we want to steward them. You probably also already have some really good structures in place for them. So a lot of times we find that people go, small donors, like an email receipt is fine. No. Personalization is actually really key at this point in time, because engagement is going to be showing somebody that you care about them. I'm actually in love, by the way, I'm reading Donor Care by John Hayden. This is an amazing book. Everybody should pick this up. And he talks explicitly about the ways that we can do personalization without really kind of driving ourselves nuts when it comes to all the different things that we can do. There's a lot of simple things that we can go beyond a really good receipt. And Meghan's team actually does really amazing jobs when it comes to thinking about the user experience of the donor's journey for it. But if you don't have good data to personalize that, you got somebody's nickname wrong or something in a follow-up, like, they're going to remember that. So personalization is key, good data is key, and also address the reality of where we are. Research firm Next After is doing a really interesting dashboard analysis of email subject lines that they're receiving in, and they're finding that only under 60% of nonprofits that they're analyzing are even basically mentioning coronavirus or the current change in environment. And that's actually pretty alarming, because if we're doing business as usual still in our, it's kind of understandable if like you sent out an email the day that they said it was the pandemic was a thing, right? Like, that's okay. But at this point, we need to address the reality. But Meghan, I know whenever I've brought this up that sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to focus on the negative. So what do you think is a good way that we should be thinking about the current environment? You did reference this a little bit before, but I want to reiterate how we should be approaching things at this moment from a messaging standpoint.
Yeah, I think we have to put ourselves in our shoes as donors too, right? And I think no matter what you find it tone deaf, if an email you get isn't at least acknowledging that we're in this world that we're in, this COVID-19 world that we're in. At the same time, I think GivingTuesday Now is a way for us to feel validated that people are hungry for stories about community. They're hungry to hear how people on this side of the world are handling all of this, and they want to hear the good side of that too. It's easy to talk about the hard face of all this, but I think days like GivingTuesdayNow is also proof that people want to hear about your impact. Tell us that one story about that one person you were able to influence or help in a big way during this hard time. That's the type of impact story that people are really hungry to hear, and they're hungry to be here for each other, right? So I think we can't be tone deaf. We do have to acknowledge it, and no matter what, you got to talk about the impact you're having, and best if that's told like person to person.
And even though I'm a self-professed data geek when it comes to this type of stuff, the reality is that your mission is best served by telling a story, not talking about statistics. Even when we talk about, average gift and things of that nature, I like to put those big numbers up, but what that tells me is that there's a story of individual nonprofits telling effective engagement to people on Giving Tuesday now, because if that average gift is increasing from April, that's the story that I think needs to come through. So I think that's an important point, that don't lead with data, lead with stories, bring it down to one individual person that represents the larger aspect of what represents your mission as well.
Exactly. And to your point about the impact, we'll talk in a little bit here about how we're helping some of our clients do exactly that, kind of flipping on its head that idea of a financial dollar amount ask versus have an impact, and here's some measurable ways that you might symbolically be able to contribute to that. So we'll talk more about that.
I don't want to take too much from later on in the presentation, so okay. I'll zip it.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I think like we've been talking, the big highlight for me out of last week was simply just that that reminder that the world is still made of people who want to tap into humanity. They wanted a moment to be expressed their humanity, and I think that's very validating and reaffirming for those of us in the nonprofit space who may have had any qualms about asking or continuing with our campaigns or with our different asks to get involved, because even though we're all in our homes, we still want to be connected, right? And so this is very validating, if nothing else, I would say. And the fact that it was completely global was really, really kind of neat.
I think it was like 135 countries, I believe. Amazing. Could be more. I'm gonna double check my numbers. Don't worry about that though.
Okay, yeah, I know some of my coworkers had attended some of the live events, and they were just, literally moved to tears just to hear stories from across the globe. And that's
145 countries.
145, wow, right. And so in a time where we're feeling so isolated, my goodness, I mean, how amazing is that to have had that experience? Yeah, totally inspiring. And inspiring when you think about the rest of the year, right? So if you are still doubting, do I do Giving Tuesday this December? Yes, you do. And do I do year-end appeals? Absolutely you do. And you do need to start now, right? And I think that's what we wanted to talk with you about. Is I know that COVID-19 has really sucked up a lot of resources internally, and it's made for a lot of urgent, left-hand turns being made. But we really need to get this back on track and start our planning, start thinking about our messaging, the cadence, what it might sound like. Obviously, it'll sound a little bit different. And also being able to prepare to be able to adapt on the fly a little bit, because we don't know what the world's going to look like how many months from now, right? I think if the last 2 months are any evidence of that, things are changing on a daily, weekly basis, and I'm sure it's going to continue. But the asking part, the sharing of the stories, the conveying of your impact in the world, that should not stop. We should continue to plan for that. So there were things that we wanted to talk about. Obviously, there was these learnings from last week, that we're trying to share, and hopefully gives you the inspiration to carry forward. The other thing too about their live streaming and how this was all very quickly pivoted on email. I saw it on some social media, and people responded, right? So yes, we're all in our homes, but it was also very evident that people have learned to be, online. They've learned how to go digital. They've learned how to go virtual in this world. And so how can we tap into that virtual environment? Because that's not going to go away. I think we're finding that this is going to be a bit of a taste of the new world to come, where virtual will always have a place in our world moving forward. Then we want to talk about, of course, the house file, right? So I know that the biggest hit I think we've been feeling right now is with our peer-to-peer event programs, and I totally get it. But now is also the time then to think about how can we shore up our house file, and if there's data that came in, if there are new donors that came in last week, how can we bring them into a welcome series, and how can we also be thinking over the course of the summer and the fall, how we continue some of that house building effort to help us continue to to navigate and succeed through the rest of the year. And then we'll also talk about some social ambassador programs and how to leverage that. And of course, taking that holistic view of all your communication. So as Tim was saying, I think there have been some emails maybe that got out that we weren't able to edit in time, but now, we have the time. So let's think about all the ways that we're reaching out to our constituents: direct mail, email, social media, phone calls, you name it, and make sure that it's all in a very nice, orchestrated, concerted effort. Before we dive in, Tim, is there anything else you want to share about Giving Tuesday Now and some of those learnings from that?
Yeah, sorry, I was just muting myself because the children. I think one of the ones that I do want to address is how we ask and how we communicate, because Giving Tuesday and Giving Tuesday Now particularly earns the ear of the Neon One consultant base. We have a larger certified consultant network that Charity Dynamics is part of, that we kind of lean into to understand what are the really effective ways that you can employ strategies. And there's certain consultants that just really hate Giving Tuesday, and then there are ones like Julia Campbell, for instance, who just utterly love it, right? And I think that there's a balance here, but the balance comes down to how you are asking. If you do any sort of campaign, and let's use Giving Tuesday Now as the example, but apply this to anything. If you have a subject line and your subject line says, it's Giving Tuesday, give now. And we can apply that to, it's time for our capital campaign, give now. It's end of the year, give now, okay? You see where I'm going here? That's a bad subject line. Do not use that subject line, okay? There's only 5 hours left on Giving Tuesday Now. We only have 48 hours till end of year, right? These are not reasons that people give. That's the thing. People are not called to action solely through that. There's senses of urgency that you can definitely lean into. That countdown timers and clocks have been being used since 1904, right? When they raised $88,000 for the YMCA. But the reality is that the real reasons that people give is that they have a connection to your specific call to action and your organization. They're opening their Google Pay or their credit card or their wallet, or writing a check because they care about you, and you in particular, or they care about the person that's asking them when it's a peer-to-peer event, because they might not necessarily know who you are, but you've at least empowered people with a good story to tell why they're connected to that, right? And so I think that's one important thing that we can learn, is that networks matter, message matters, channel matters too. If we looked at the average size gift, I gotta say this, and my bosses love me talking about credit cards, but I'm always gonna talk about the wonderfulness of direct mail as well, okay? So if you have a digital platform and they're telling you to stop doing any sort of direct mail engagement, that platform is not right for you because they don't get it. There's a lot of things that show us that direct mail are going to help drive even peer-to-peer campaigns being done online. Okay, that's an important point. So don't back off on any of your channels unless it is like extremely obvious that the return on investment on that channel, which could be direct mail, by the way, is bad. But if it's just like, we have to cut direct mail because it's too much work, like, don't do that. Same for online too. If anything, we should be thinking smarter about online, and that's why we have Meghan on the line here too. So
well, thanks. And as
rant over, sorry. I'm just seeing so much stuff being thrown out there that gets me really concerned in terms of the messaging that vendors and consultants are telling people, in terms of like, just focus on this one thing. And it's like, focus on what's best for you. And here's the data that shows what is generally effective, but you have to think about it from your organization standpoint.
Totally agree. Couldn't say it better. Nice rant.
There you go. Rant over. Let's actually lean into some of the really cool things that have come out of this from a digital standpoint, because I'm all about the digital. I think there are just cool ways that we can supplement it through direct mail to get people to know about it. So let's expand our communications. Meghan, what should we be thinking about in terms of the future?
Well, that's exactly it. And if anybody we had a webinar a few weeks ago where we had another friend of ours talked about how she even is home with her kids, or like, preteen and teenage kids who have her doing TikTok dances, and so the world is changing. Even people like myself, who I'm not very social media savvy, I have certainly reached out and spent a lot more time on social media, just because I'm isolated and I want to feel connection and I want to see what other people are doing, and I need some levity too. I need a little bit of humor, and you turn the TV on and it's just depressing, and so I feel like I get my pop culture through my social media. All to say that we always tell everybody, meet people where they're at. right? And I think that what we've seen in the last couple of months is people are online. They're on their social media channels, right? So I think it's worth the testing, dip your toe in to try to get out there a little bit more. And I know a couple of the webinars we've had people say, my gosh, my social media people are so overwhelmed right now. Like they've never been tapped this much before. Totally get it, right? And so we'll talk about why you need a social ambassador program to kind of help those folks. But it's true, we have to meet people where they're at, and so leaning into those different platforms like TikTok or Hustle or some of these others, now's the time to go ahead and try that. Same thing with ads, right? I mean, ads do work. We have seen that. And so if you haven't tested, I think now is the time to try to test a little spend and see if you get an ROI on it. But certainly if you have already been doing sort of paid ad investments, everything that we're hearing out there is that's the way to go. Again, because people are online, and so they're paying attention to all of that. Other ways to expand communications. We've had a lot of clients have great response when they're doing some sort of webinar briefing with their medical experts or the people who are higher up in their organization who could talk about the mission operations side of things, or sharing sort of survivor stories and people like that. It's just like this, right? I mean, the webinar environment, the video conferencing environment allows people to feel like they're a little bit more in touch with who you are, with what you're offering the world, with just that you're still caring, about them and your community and your tribe. So certainly, I think we need to keep that up for sure. And then finally, you have to talk about the peer-to-peer programs. And as much as, we, I think, had this panic moment of, oh my gosh, peer-to-peer not being in person, like how are we going to really make that still feel energetic and celebratory, and the energy, the vibe that we all feel, right, when we're in together in person with hundreds of thousands of people. Well, again, last week was great proof that a community will come together. A community that cares will come together, and one way to leash them and harness them is to get out there on social media and help promote your event through your social media channels, maybe more so than you had before, because that's where people are at. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that in terms of expanding the communications?
I mean, I think that summarizes it really well. Now is the time to feel comfortable to fail, to feel comfortable to experiment, especially in the digital side. There's a lot of folks, this may be new to them. Even well-established DIY programs, well-established nonprofits of any size, they've never had to think about doing a Zoom webinar necessarily, right? But we've seen some really great examples of organizations doing it. The Minnesota Horticultural Society started doing gardening webinars, like that was a cool one. But then also Michael J. Fox Foundation, longtime user, Rallybound, Salesforce, they took their entire peer-to-peer program online, all the virtual 5Ks and things like that. We saw another one back on My Feet that pretty early on, they launched their own fitness, like DIY fitness campaign. It's like, we're going to email you fitness videos to do at home.
Right.
And so there's a lot of cool things that are forcing people to be innovative. The one thing that pretty much in every single one of these webinars that I've been saying, though, is don't look at those and go, oh, how am I going to do it? Because we are not working from home right now. We are at home working during a crisis. So be realistic about what you can tackle each day, but try to tackle something new each day in terms of moving the needle forward. And I love all of these here in terms of the different type of stuff, the texting through Hustle, the conversational elements. There's a lot of cool things that can happen when you think about your donor's journey through your organization. And so I love this. This is so cool. Yeah,
no, that's exactly it. Tim, I took a look at the time and I just want to move us along just a little bit.
I know I'm talking too much. I'm sucking up too much.
You and me both. It just shows that we care.
Yep.
So I did mention, about the social ambassadors, and for, those folks who are living in the social media world and your communications departments, know that this is a group of volunteers that you can harness, and now is the time to ask. It is a very simple ask to say to somebody, would you be willing to sign up to basically post, like, share, tweet, right? It's all about helping to harness other people who are willing to then get your word out even more so than you can with the existing network you have access to. So leverage people's networks, leverage their passions for you, and let them do that for you. Obviously there's some targeted segments that you might want to consider, with this initially, people who you already have perhaps a following with. But the idea is basically that whether you are trying to gear up for a campaign, whether you're trying to build a house list, whether you're trying to prepare for a peer-to-peer, now more than ever, we need our social ambassadors. We need people who are already out there who are willing to help us get the word out about what you're doing and the difference that you're making. And as soon as you have them sign up, give them a quick little action to do. Can you share this post, this impact story about what we just did last weekend? One of our clients, the Greater Food Depository, Greater Chicago Food Depository, we launched this for them and it took off very, very quickly. They have done exceptionally well. And it's just amazing how much people want to help, right? And one of the reasons why this works so well is because you're asking people who are already in your circle, right? And so they already have that affinity for you. And it's so simple. It's a low bar to ask, will you share this? Will you tweet this? Will you, poke, tick, I don't even know because I'm not all that savvy and all that. And the answer is yeah, right? I mean, it's that demonstration that there are people out there that have a very strong commitment to your cause. And so in this time when I think you've been doing the hard work, you're rolling your sleeves up, you're working harder than ever with your cause, to know that there are people out there who are willing to help get the word out for you and try to help get you the support that they can in any way that they can. So I love that also because we know how we work as a society. We all want that social proof. So if my buddy does it, if we see a celebrity do it, we're just more inclined to then support and help out and do in kind and just mimic what we see. And so, that's the other thing I love about this program is that you can actually, like I said, kind of create that social proof that your organization is having an impact in the world when someone else might not have thought about it before until their friend told them about it. So, is there anything else that you would say about the Social Ambassadors program?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well.
Cool. Okay, because I do want to jump into our topic about other giving vehicles. So, we talked about the way you're communicating and certainly not being afraid to ask. Peer-to-peer programs are something that we have to rally and virtualize. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But the end of the year is still a little bit unknown. So one of the ways that you can create an insurance plan for yourself is to make sure that all of your channels are running on all cylinders. And what I mean by that is make sure that you are being strategic about how you put out your matching gifts offerings out there. Make sure that you have a sustainer giving program if you don't already, and if you do, be thinking about how you can provide that ask a little bit more assertively in the donation process. And also don't be afraid to put an upgrade program out there as well. We'll talk about these in a little bit more detail. The last one being the donor advised funds. So let's talk quickly about the matching gifts. It's sort of a no-brainer. We have got 65% of the Fortune 500 companies that are offering matching gifts and so many more beyond that, right? And I understand that we're hearing our friends and family lose their jobs because companies are closing, but there are just as many companies who are doing really well and want to give back, right? So now is the time to ask people who are still gratefully employed to help out and ask for that matching gift. Over 18 million individuals are working for companies that have those matching gift programs. So take the time to go ahead and evaluate how you're currently asking that. And if you're not, look at some options that are out there. Some, are more seamless than others. And I know, Tim, you can probably share some about that. But we've certainly seen where if the language is appropriate and if the timing within the donation process is appropriate, it really becomes a no-brainer as part of the donating process to enter my name, enter the gift amount, and say, yep, I want to make sure my employer is included in this, and away we go. And it's very quick and easy. But Tim, what have you seen with this? Because I know that with your program, you've worked with some companies.
Yeah, as part of the Neon One ecosystem, we also curate the surrounding integrations, not just the consultants we work with, but also third-party software that might augment some gifts. And so one of those that works with several Neon One products, including Rallybound, is Double the Donation. So it's just kind of the experience. You go ahead and donate. It's part of the form. Boom, keeps it easy. But I did check in with them because they have certain expertise here. And pretty early on, I said, did you hear about any matching gift programs getting drawn back because of coronavirus? And they had confirmed, no, they haven't heard anything like that. While there have been like other material things that companies have done, this types of CSR has not, to their understanding, taken any sort of budgetary hit at this point. So continue to invest into this side.
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah,
Love
that was
it.
like the first thing that I wanted to ask about. I was like, are you seeing this cut? So no, which is very encouraging. That was very good.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, the other thing that we want to talk about is sustainer giving. There are resources out there that are following how these have been performing in comparison to non-sustainers like Network for Good, and obviously a lot of people who are on the Blackbaud program with Illuminate Online. And in those cases, they see that folks who are signing themselves up to be a recurring donor, they're obviously retaining them more so because the commitment's there. It's almost when you sign yourself up for a recurring gift month over month, you know what you're doing. You know that this is for longer than a month or two. You have the intention of this being 12 months or more. And with those folks who are doing those, when you have the opportunity to communicate with them throughout the year of all the great ways that you're putting their donor dollars to work to create impact in the world, well, then that upgrade process is really becomes a no-brainer too, right? And that's what we're talking about right now. Is if if you're especially one of those organizations on the front line and you've been working your tail off for the last 2 months, really trying to keep up with just everything that's happening now, be thinking about an upgrade. Now's the time to ask, and people will want to help. And those sustainers have much higher year-over-year growth than the one-timers that we've seen here, at least from Blackbaud's report. But Tim, I know that you also monitor this, and I think it's maybe varied by the vertical, perhaps.
Yeah, it of course does kind of generally vary by the vertical, but there's a few key pieces of information here. One that directly relates to recurring giving. The other, I think, is a good lead into who you should focus in for your peer-to-peer. So on the peer-to-peer side, I think recurring donors are a good source of potential recruitment because it shows that they have commitment to the program, things of that nature. Meghan, I would be interested in the kind of correlation that you might see between those two types of groups. But retaining fundraisers is also just as important on a year-to-year basis because Rallybound did a study, and if you keep those folks for 3 to 4 years, they go up to like 130% in terms of their overall year-over-year growth. So retention of those folks is important, but this sustaining program on a monthly basis is also a really good investment for any type of program that you have. Peer-to-peer also offers this option many times. And why that's important is that a study by Erica Wasdorf in her book Monthly Giving basically found that these folks have a 7 times higher likelihood to become legacy donors as well. So that's really key, and also relates to the third part that Meghan that you wanted to bring out too, because they might have other ways that they want to give money besides credit cards, for instance.
That's right. Yeah, and those donor advised funds, right? I mean, it's amazing when I was learning that there's, billions of dollars that are sitting in donor advised funds that have not been distributed. I mean, it's mind blowing to think about that. And I love the program you're telling me about the half my DAF or half your DAF challenge that's been put out there. And it's not too late for those organizations that are listening to us now. You can literally promote this matching donor advised fund gift, basically program that this couple is putting out there. It ends, I think it's September 30th is what I saw.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Certainly, yeah, because this is a way for people who just thought they were socking away that money for a rainy day when they really thought they'd want to make an impact. Well, now's the time. If not now, when? Is what I want to ask. So yeah, I mean, these numbers show that not only is the giving, the contributing to donor advised funds growing year over year, but also are the distributions. And again, now more than ever is the time to be asking your folks to not just contribute, but also to think about you as a way of doing that. And there are free widgets, right? So there's widgets that you can put into your site, to make it really easy and frictionless for donors to be able to do that. So put it
Fidelity,
in email campaigns.
Schwab puts those together. Yeah, there's some nice things for that. And what's even more important than just do it. Like, make sure you have it there, because last time this happened, actually, Lilly School of Philanthropy did a study back in the recession of 2007, 2008, that they actually found that during times of economic stress, donor payout rate as well as flow rate actually increased compared to other previous times during economic stress. So that's an important part. DAFs actually pay out a lot more during this time because their donors are like, it's time to step up, basically.
That's exactly it, right? And so, more and more of the mid-level donor, I think is what you're getting at too, is giving to these funds. And, to your point, they tend to be more recession tolerant. I think that's what you're saying, is we saw that more so even back in 2008. And it's just so easy at this point. You can make it so convenient for somebody to do it, from your website, from your donation forms. It's just a no-brainer. So,
and to bring it full circle, even to Giving Tuesday Now, and to even peer-to-peer elements, Meghan, we actually have technology that we've employed where our giving event sites can allow individuals to pay out during a giving day with their donor advised fund directly on the form. So really, really interesting stuff when it comes to how DAFs are getting more integrated into the larger technology ecosystem. It's pretty fascinating in terms of what we can do when it comes to this type of stuff. I didn't bring that up to you. I can't believe I forgot to bring that up to you in our initial talk.
Secret.
But I know we want to be respectful of people's time, but we got a really exciting way to end today's presentation too, because in the MPO's Rise campaign, we actually cited Charity Dynamics virtualizing your peer-to-peer events as one of our core resources that people should be focusing on. So that's one of the reasons that we were excited to bring them on today. What are the things that you folks are seeing are being super effective with your clients and other types of organizations?
Yeah, and I really appreciate you, allowing me to take the time to talk about this, because it is really exciting, right? I think the biggest question we'd be getting from our clients with the peer-to-peer events is, will my people participate in this? And again, just to harken back to the whole context of Giving Tuesday Now, yeah, right? People want connection. People who care about your mission and have a passion for it definitely want to get involved in some way. And more than anything, they want the connection with their tribe, right? If people who are sharing in their stories with your cause and with your organizations. But now we always have to figure out how we can leverage them and harness that through their favorite technologies. And what we know is the people who are going to do this are the same people who have already been participating in your event year over year, right? They're looking for how is this going to look, and just tell me what it looks like. What do I have to do? People may not be completely 100% about the technology, but if you can guide them there and teach them, they'll come along. They're hungry for it, right? So there are several things that we've been putting in place in the last couple of months. One is obviously that there is planning that should go into this, right? There is a little bit of discovery to be done about your event program and what it is that jazzes your participants most. What are those elements that we want to make sure that we're digitizing in a way to where the essence of that brand that you've worked so hard to build over years and years and years doesn't get lost. And building out that roadmap of not just, what should the event day experience look like, but what does that whole time period leading up to it? Because let's be honest, in the peer-to-peer world, that's when all the fundraising is happening, is leading up to the event day. And the event day was really a culmination of a celebration of everything you've accomplished up to that point. So how can we keep that challenge and that impetus and that movement around the fundraising in a virtual world? So we certainly have the consulting ability to lay out the plan of what that virtually looks like. That's unique to your brand, and we're certainly doing that. But then it's about, okay, talking about the digitizing, like what does that really look like? And I mentioned it earlier about rethinking and kind of turning on its head this idea of the registration where you're setting your fundraising goal and the donation process. Is how can I show someone who's sitting at home that you really do need to continue to fundraise during these times, because your impact, your effect on our impact makes a difference. So what we've been working with a couple of our clients on is literally looking at their donation form and saying, how do we translate this into something symbolic to your mission? Think about the Heifer International Catalog, right? Where you can donate a goat for $50, or you can donate a duck for 25. How can we do that where I can fundraise to, to support 5 nurses and, a NICU center, or how can I fundraise to provide X number of supplies of something. This is the way that we want to reshape and are reshaping the donation form in a way that's very visual. So you're sort of visualizing the impact for them, and you're making them think about how this still matters, right? Their fundraising still matters, even if at the end of the day they're not going to be walking together with hundreds of other people. The other thing about being virtual too is people feeling distanced, right? And so how is it you can remind them of this greater community? Because if I'm not showing up on event day and seeing myself surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people, then how can I be reassured that there still is this much larger community around me? And one of the ways that we're doing that with our clients is what we're calling a mission mosaic. So by taking a photo of myself training, I'm out walking around my neighborhood, and maybe I got a t-shirt I there earned from my fundraising, it got mailed to me. I'll upload this photo and it becomes part of this larger mosaic that starts to take shape over the course of the event season. And maybe it's revealed on event day, and it's something I can share with my friends and family and say, hey, look what I did with the rest of my walking community. I can drill in and turn on pick on my picture, and it can flip it around and show my story. I just love this idea of visually creating something together so you can see that you're a part of a greater sum. And I think that's really important in these times when I'm feeling so isolated. One of the other things that we're doing, of course, is the goodie bag. I mean, everybody loves going to an event and getting your goodie bag when you check in. So of course, sponsors too are looking for a way to stay engaged. And so how is it that we can provide them that forum to be able to share their goods, whether it's click here for a free voucher for something, or click here for a coupon of something, or do this to be put into a rally or a drawing of some sort. So certainly, we can accomplish that. But there's also some other fun goodies we can do that I think can also encourage fundraising. So fundraise X dollars and receive a free background for my Zoom that's maybe branded for your event, or a Facebook profile pic background, or fun little stickers that you can add to your photos before you post them to your social media that are kind of bring the event experience to life for you. So we've really gotten kind of fun with this, and I love that. I'll show some examples of that in a moment. And so for our clients, like who are on the Rally Bound product and have our mobile app solution with it, we're offering this Balanced Fundraising Plus customization. And what's really kind of neat about this is that there will be the ability for our clients to configure this on their own. And I really love that we can do that for folks. The reason why we want to engage people more so in that mobile app is that we found that those who do raise 3 times more. So it just seemed like a no-brainer to try to figure out how is it that we can engage people and draw them into that mobile app more so than they already do. And a couple ways of doing that are announcement screens. So rather than just logging in and immediately kind of being thrown into your thermometer and next steps and so forth, this announcement screen would be like a greeting. Hey, how's it going, Tim? Let me tell you about our new fun feature we have to try. Or maybe it's a picture that just brings you into the mission and reminds you of your why. It could be used to provide announcements about your event. Maybe you've made a tweak on your itinerary that you want to announce to folks. There's lots of different ways this could be used, but I just love the idea of it making it a little bit more interesting when they log into the app to not quite know what they might be prompted with when they open it up. Now, we have always had push notifications, at least for the last year or so, but we're taking it to the next level with animated GIFs. So with this cute little boy here, you see how the push notification will come up on my screen. And I think, sadly, we're maybe are getting a little bit desensitized to them, right? And so it'd be kind of neat to have this rotating image on my screen that really grabs my attention. And in this case, it's reminding me to share my why, right? Saying this is our why, so I want you to share yours. Another way that folks on Rally Bound can have fun with their app here is to also have new filters or frames or stickers and things they can add to their photo that are branded for your event. And This is even more fun to post, right? I mean, everyone wants to personalize their experience. And so here's a fun way that they can personalize their involvement in what they're doing for you. And while they're doing that, we're also adding a social media gallery. So talking about creating that community feel, this will be on your mobile device. So those on Rally Bound will open up their app and they'll be able to see through curated hashtags all the other folks that are doing the same event with them and posting their pictures, and they'll have their tutus on and whatever else, what those stickers they're choosing to use. And it's just a neat way to kind of feel connected, and other people that are taking action leading up to your event day with you. And lastly, with this Boundless Fundraising Plus configuration are the ways to incorporate your sponsors even more so. Yet again, trying to increase that impression, those value of their sponsorship. And one of the ways, of course, is with having their logos on that homepage, and also things like sponsoring the push notifications. So when that push notification comes to me with the cute little boy, you could say, this is brought to me by Target or Chili's or whoever, right? So some neat ways to kind of bring them into the experience too. And the last thing I wanted to share that I think the Rally Bound folks are going to be really excited about is this integration with physical tracking. So what I love about this is that with one single app, you can not only monitor and do your fundraising on the go, but you can also be tracking your activity. And not just track it, but have fun with some competition. You can see a leaderboard with your team, with your event, across the program. You can accept certain challenges physically and it'll track it for you. So this is some neat stuff we're really excited to be rolling out this summer, where it'll integrate with Apple Health, Google Fit, and then Strava for those endurance athletes. And then just to give an idea of what your clients would see, obviously it's right on that home screen where it's not just the fundraising activity they're seeing, but also down here you see my activity and how I might be ranking, because we're all a little competitive and we like to see how we're doing in comparison to others. We also like to earn badges, so we can incorporate badges that are not just fundraising related, but also activity or challenge related. So I love that you can incorporate that. Be a 7-day challenge, a 30-day challenge, whatever might be meaningful for your event program. And then of course, having that ranking, right? Everybody loves to see their name, and it's kind of like seeing your name in lights there on the screen. And then finally, those challenges that I was saying, I think gamification is huge and even bigger now than before. I think we all look to our cell phones, not just for information and connection, but for entertainment too. And so this is a really neat way to kind of bring that to them for sure. So, to what you're saying about, how is it that we can ride this wave of community and giving, and just realizing that people do still want to do good in the world, but also do it in a very personalized way, and especially enhancing this kind of bubble I think that we probably all feel like we're in right now while we're sort of sheltering in place, kind of, depending on where you're living. I think these are all ways of doing that, right? It's getting creative with how we reach out to them, getting creative with how we ask them to give, and getting creative with how we engage them, and giving them new ways to participate with us and engage with us. So Tim, I did a lot of talking just now, so I'm going to leave it to you to do some wrap up for us. But what would your final thoughts be for everybody?
And I want to make sure we have a time for a little bit of questions. We might go tiny bit over, folks, but I think we're going to wrap up the formal content right now. And what I want to end on is the fact that a lot of organizations are trying to figure out what to do. We need to be able to deliver impact fast. One of the things that Neon One is invested into is ensuring that we have really scalable digital fundraising elements right now. We've seen a lot of live streaming events happening, shifting to those virtual walks and runs, and we need tools and we need direction that are going to be able to do that as quick as possible. And that's what I think that we do really well in terms of the story that we tell. But ultimately, this needs to lead back to sustainable data for year round. Some of the folks who might be on the call today might be, solely focused on peer-to-peer, and that's your job, right? And the end of the day, though, your major gift officers who are in another department are going to want to know what those individual fundraisers have also helped bring in, right? And that they might be a good major gift candidate or somebody who might be interested in the capital campaign. And you can't figure out all of this, and this leads, Meghan, into the question that we have here. All of this, you can't figure it out unless it syncs tightly into a database of records. So ultimately, that's why Neon One focuses in on integration so much around all these different point solutions. There's a lot of stuff out there that's like, well, I use this and that and the other thing, and it's like, yeah, but how do I know at the end of the day how all this stuff works together? And that's why we lean on direction from partners like you to do really amazing social engagement things from stuff like Boundless. And then we can handle all the really cool foundational elements, the payment processing, all of that. Now, in terms of planning, let's shift into some Q&A because we have a little bit of time and folks start maybe pumping over. We'll maybe do, one or two questions. Really good one here in terms of timing. typically, many nonprofits would be planning a June campaign, end of the fiscal year for a lot of nonprofits, right? So, but right now it feels too close to our Giving Tuesday Now day. What are your thoughts? Should we still be charging for it, or look to July? Do they maybe delay a little bit?
Mm.
I think it depends on the nature of the campaign, in all honesty.
Yeah, I would think so. And also, Giving Tuesday Now, it was brand new, right? And while it did have amazing reach, it obviously couldn't reach everybody. So I wouldn't hesitate, frankly.
Yeah.
But that would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, and the thing is that it typically takes up to 18 touch points to turn somebody into a so-called major donor, right? $1,000 or more. So, your newsletter doesn't count. Like, that's not a touch point, but a meaningful, personalized appeal with a video. Or let's say you ultimately feel uncomfortable about doing that, and then you want to push to July. Do a thank you campaign in June then. Make sure that you do something dedicated for the folks who did in Giving Tuesday Now beyond what you've already done, and say, look, it could literally be, is it June? I think it's June. I think we're halfway through 2020. Let's actually step back and say thank you for getting us through half of the year. Like, do a halfway through, we got through this together, folks, campaign, if you want. Feel free to take that and rip that off, folks. I think that's a good idea, personally. You talked about what not to put in email subject. What should you? What should it contain? It should contain this is also where it helps to hone your segments. So this is where you're not treating every single donor in your database or providing your peer-to-peer fundraisers one catch-all template. You should be able to give them the flexibility to personalize it. And if you're using built-in tools where you have control over the communications, then you should build segments that target different elements and a few key donor personas that relate to your mission. So I'll give an example of an environmental organization, right? One segment for personalization would be donors who came in on Giving Tuesday Now for the first time under $250. They should get a different message, and the subject line should be thanking them for their support on Giving Tuesday for the first time, right? So my sound went off. Megan, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, yeah. The recording should pick it up for later on. It could be my children, interrupting things. They are like dropping anvils up there. I don't know if you've heard any of that, but it is good. I got good headset. So let's continue with our quick example for environmental organizations. Let's then take mid-sized donors between $250 and $999 who have not given at this point this year, but have given at least some sort of gift last year and in 2018. That's another segment. That is, we need you now more than ever. You. Put the word you. And if I'm going to be honest, and I don't get paid for this, and John passed away last year, so I don't even get to thank him for this book personally, but he's going to give you a lot. This book is amazing when it comes to what you put in the subject line. So I'm very heavily influenced by what he actually has said there. Jeff Brooks is another one, good communications expert in terms of what to put in your subject lines. Tom Ahern, another one. Just name dropping a few people who influenced me. But a final one for our educational example would be $1,000 or more, and they've already given this year. Then you zero in on we have to get through the end of the year, and the only way that we can do it is with your help. You have a sense of urgency, a sense of need, those types of things. Megan, I mean, that's kind of what I would say in that example.
Yeah, and I think what you said earlier too about now it's time to test as well. This is also unprecedented times too, right? So knowing what may have worked before may not work now either. But I also do appreciate recently about the Making It All About Them. We had done a webinar not too long ago with Otis Felton from Turnkey, and he very much is all about the count your use, right?
Yep.
Right now, your emails, your subject line, the PS, everything should have the word you in it.
Yep.
Almost as many times as you can. Make it about your donor.
And
Absolutely.
make them the hero of the story. That's
Yeah.
ultimately what's your subject line? Make them the hero of the story. That's
Mhm.
it. That's what the subject line is. If they aren't the hero, if they're not the one, you're the guide that's
Yeah.
guiding them toward. You got to be Yoda, and they're Luke Skywalker, right?
Love it.
So what would Yoda say? And do it grammatically correct, perhaps. Maybe don't do an actual Yoda subject line, but the realistic thing is that the donor is the hero in this. If you're talking about your organization and your mission and your statistics and your stuff, that's going to turn people off. That's not going to make them excited. But if you say, you know, you as a donor make this happen, and you helped Lucy, that's going to help. That's going to help. Have you done a webinar on donor segmentation? Seems like a great topic. Well, ding, 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 Alicia. I think we might have a dedicated. I'd love to do a whole thing on donor segmentation. I think we've done some analysis on donor segments. I'm going to hunt through. I'm going to make a mental note of your name. I'm going to try to find some stuff for you to help. But maybe we have time for one more question, folks. I know we're just a tiny bit over. I think the walls of keeping things together in my household are about to break. But 25 minutes till TV time. So any other questions, folks? No, it's not TV time yet.
The natives are getting restless.
Where can we get neon hats? Oh, okay. Well, Kieran, I'm going to follow up with you. We'll talk about that. Donor segments would be great. How to engage an older donor base. Okay. Actually, I do want to actually, folks, if you have to sign off, I completely understand, but I actually think that's a really good question to end on in terms of Meghan. I want to kick it over to you. We talked all about all this cool stuff. What about our older donors?
I know. And yet, here's the crazy thing is my 74-year-old father has hundreds more friends on Facebook than I do. And so,
Yep.
He's out there, right? He's checking his email. He's on Facebook. Those are the two big things for someone like that. I think segmentation really matters. I think looking your database at how people have responded best. Is it direct mail? Is it through the emails? Through different types of appeals? I think you need to trust your data. Lean on your data
Yep.
more on that. When it comes to the virtual experience, just speaking of personal experience, my 70-year-old mother now, she does her fundraising walk. I'll keep it anonymous every fall, and she was heartbroken to hear that it's going to go virtual. And she was questioning me yesterday on Sunday on Mother's Day about what am I going to do. I was like, Mom, all your friends on Facebook? Yeah. Well, that's what you're going to do. All your friends on email? Yeah. Well, that's what you're going to do. She's not on other social media channels. But when I
She
explained
might
to
not
her
be doing
that
TikTok, but
she's not going to be doing TikTok. Yeah. But, when I explained to her that it's how you approach your fundraising isn't going to change a whole lot, right? And for her in that way, she got excited about it. And I said, hey, you've been FaceTiming with me and your grandkids. Like, you know how to do this. So, it's all good. I think it's just the anything we can do on the education pieces, which I was mentioning at the beginning of, talking about our strategy is that's a big part of the communication going into any virtual event is also the communication around the tools that you're going to be using and making sure that you're providing the opportunities for folks to learn, with you on that. And I think that's why the little webinars and little maybe live sessions you might have leading up to an event day, some culmination of your program can be helpful in that, right? Because it's almost like a little testing for them.
yeah, I think micro content is always going to be good. Okay, honey, you can go. In terms of obviously it's going to depend on which age is going to respond to what message, right? And so certain things work with my children, certain things work with my parents, but ultimately I think what people do respond to is your mission and telling your story and why that's going to make a difference in someone's life. There is very good data that shows that boomers, Generation X, which is a very important growing segment of the population that we need to pay attention to in terms of their ability to give. those older generations, they're paying attention and they are online and they are digesting media in ways that, you know, I'm a millennial, you know, I have a mortgage, right? So like we can't think about generations the same way that it's been kind of been yelled at us about avocado toast for so long. Like that, the reality is that there's a lot of the platforms that sync very, very well, like Facebook fundraising and stuff like that, that like younger kids aren't using. Actually, the largest search engine in the world is, or the second largest search engine in the world is YouTube at this point. And so people are on these, right? YouTube Live, that's a thing that you can do. So anyway, okay, we got some great suggestions for webinar content. Meghan, any final thoughts as I'm going to mute myself just to ensure that you can have an unencumbered statement.
Oh, thank you. No, I think really what it comes down to is we wanted to be able to impart on everybody that if there's anything we learn about Giving Tuesday Now, it's that the world wants to help. The world wants to make a difference still, and they're looking for the channels to do that through. So let's work together to think about the rest of this year and going into next year. How can we shore up all of the different ways that you can connect people's hearts and money to your mission while we kind of navigate the impact of this global pandemic? I think that's what we need to think about. It's just more broadly, you know, beyond peer-to-peer, but just all the other digital ways that we can be connecting people with your mission and with your impact, whether it be donor advised funds, whether it be matching gifts, whether it be standard programs, whether it be virtualizing events. And you know, there are folks like Tim at Neo1 and us and our staff here at Cherry Dynamics that are happy to help talk through that. And thank you so much, Tim, for having me.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great. This was great. Sorry we ran a little long, folks. Looks like we kept most of the attention of the crowd. We got some really great ideas for follow-up content that we can hone. Some things that we've done previously. Follow us on LinkedIn, respectively. You know, I love and post a lot of different research and you know, thoughts on the industry and stuff like that. So feel free to reach out and connect in any way. Meghan, this was an absolute pleasure. And you know, let's do it. Can't wait for the rest of the year and see what people, how they, you know, survive and thrive.
Absolutely. Can't wait. Thanks, everybody.
Okay,
Thanks,
let's
Tim.
do it. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.